Doug, welcome to the show. Before you took on your consulting role, how many companies were you a CEO, CTO, or a founder of?
Wow, let me think that through. It goes way back. So I got my first business license when I was 14 years old. So if you want to talk about like companies that I've been associated with, it's been dozens. If you want to talk about companies that like trade goods that consumers would know about, I've been the CEO of three. I've been the chief technology officer for four, maybe CEO of four. Yeah, more than I care to talk about, but I guess I care to talk about all of them, but more than the average bear. I'll say that. What I'm into now is I really enjoy the process of the startup. And so there's this new concept of 0 to 1, which is getting founders off the ground and to their first stop gate, if you will. So I've been working with a number of founders in the last year or so, getting them from 0 to 1. And then we kind of figure out who needs to do what. And if I'm involved, great. If I'm not, that's fine too. I've got companies that I'll do a 3-month gig with, a 6-month, a year, whatever it takes. And I'm just basically fractional. I dice up my time to work with other companies. So right now I'm working with 3 different companies, and that keeps me pretty occupied.
Sure. I think we're going to have an amazing conversation about the consulting. Before we get into that, I asked you the first question as a little bit of an alley-oop for myself.
Yep.
I remember hearing you on Gary's podcast. You said that you graduated high school with a 1.2 GPA.
Hmm.
Given the companies that you started, the success that you've had, right? Obviously, there have been failures in between.
Oh, yeah.
How much, especially, I think this question pertains to somebody younger like me, but how much of a correlation, Doug, do you think there is between the success you have educationally and in school versus more of life success and outside in the world?
So this is a really interesting question. I have 2 college-aged boys right now, and one of them is my oldest is 19. He's a sophomore right now at the University of Cincinnati, and I've got a senior in high school that just applied to all of his colleges last week. Their mom is a doctor, so there was obviously really good grades in school, really good grades in college, really good grades in medical school. Like there was a lot of school there. And here's me who barely got out of high school. I think the things that I learned in high school that help me today are minimal. It was more like the kindness of certain teachers that kind of help shape how I interact with people. I think if I were to have the ability to be in high school right now, like let's rewind and say I'm 16 years old, I would probably still have an issue with high school, given that I learn differently than other people do. When you're in school, you're learning 5, 6 subjects a day, diced into little increments. How I learn is I find the thing I need to learn and I attack it for 12 straight hours until I figure it out. And then I move on to the next thing that I got to figure out. And that's not how school is set up. So if you're asking me how school shaped my success in business, it really didn't. It was my tenacity and the kindness of the teachers that I did well in. And that's what I look back on fondly now as a 50-year-old man. Like I look back on my time in high school because that was the last high school or the last schooling that I had officially. You know, I was set up and ready. I was going to go to art school. So that's what I was. I mean, my grandfather and father were both photographers. I grew up in a dark room basically or a studio working on lighting, working on, processing film, stuff like that. So like my upbringing was all artistic, so that's all I knew. It wasn't until after high school that I got in with a guy that was into tech. This was the baby infancy of the internet, and I just latched onto it because I was always like good with computers from a technical standpoint, but then seeing how that related to art and how that was going to change things really spawned the career that I have today.
That is an amazing answer. It's very interesting to hear your perspective on it. And I think it's interesting to say that the mother to your kids is more in a like role that require a lot of education and you're kind of on the other end of the spectrum to where you've reached a certain point without the education needed. For your kids, if you were let's say to have a conversation with your kids and they said, yeah, I want to take more of an entrepreneurial route, what advice would you give to them given their age?
Well, so I've had this conversation with my oldest, Garrett, and when I picked him up from his last day of his freshman year and brought him home, we talked for Cincinnati is about 3 hours south of Cleveland, where I was driving to. So I live part time in Cleveland, Ohio, and then the rest of the time I'm in Cleveland about a week a month, and the rest of the time I'm in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So I go back and forth so I can spend time with my youngest son, Oliver. So I see him monthly. But anyway, I was talking with Garrett on the way home from his freshman year, and I was like, "What did you learn this year? Like, what resonated with you?
Mm.
What are you going to take as this is what I learned my freshman year of college?" And his favorite subject was the music of the Beatles. It was a course that he took. So he latched on immediately to something in the arts, which I thought was really interesting. He got okay grades. I don't know that any, kid of the COVID era, his freshman year, it was 2020. That was COVID. So he didn't do well his first year. I think all kids are adjusting. So this new batch of kids going into college right now have a different outlook on what it is that they're going to learn and how. And the advice that I gave him was to just experiment and try different things. Like I told him, if you decide after your sophomore year that college just isn't for you, but this one thing really is, like, you can just learn that one thing. I have hired hundreds and hundreds of people in my career. I have never once, I promise, looked at what college they went to and said, "Oh, this person must be smart." I'm looking at what they can bring to the table, what they've done, what they've accomplished. I'm looking at the vibe that I get from them, if I think they're going to be eager to learn, or if I think they're going to be, someone that needs a lot of direction, which I find with a lot of people that are not as entrepreneurial is they need a lot of direction on exactly what to do next. And when I'm hiring somebody, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for people that are self-starters that can figure stuff out on their own. So the advice I give my kids is to just be curious. It all comes back to curiosity. If you're curious and you're thinking about if this, then that, like if I do this, then this might happen, but that would lead to that other thing that I might get into. So like I look for a more holistic approach to what it is that someone wants to learn. I never give advice on to anyone on what they should do, what they should learn. Like if somebody came to me and said, what would you expect or what should I do if I want to do this thing?" Like, well, just go do the thing. Like that's what's important. If Garrett decides that he only wants to ever do the 2 years of college, I've got him focusing on business stuff right now, understanding finance, understanding business ethics, understanding general business principles, because those apply to absolutely anything that you'll get into. If you're going to start a business, if you're going to work for a business, like just understanding cost of goods sold, understanding unit economics, understanding baseline business principles, I think is the most important thing for anybody to learn.
Sure. When you say you have Garrett learning these things, in what way, in what medium, I guess you can say, are you teaching him?
So, for example, he texted me last year. It was his freshman year. He had a light class schedule his second semester, and he wanted to start a business. And I said, "Okay, what are you interested in?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Well, I can't help you with that. I can't make you interested in something. What is it that you're looking at?" He's like, "I want to day trade." I'm like, "You don't want to day trade. You don't have enough money to day trade. But what about like drop shipping? Like we could set up a Shopify site and you could try your hand at drop shipping. Like that would scratch the itch for you running a business, but could also lead to you understanding more about web interfaces." He got into Python coding for just little widgets here and there. And I was like, yes, dig in on that. Go learn that thing. Go practice. Go break stuff. I'll ship you a computer to use as a server if you want. Like anything that you want to do programmatically, go for it. So the types of things that I've talked to him about specifically are more around like self exploration and what it is that he really wants to be. He doesn't know. And to be fair, his father, me, 50 years old, still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Like, I love doing consulting now for companies because it exposes me to many different industries. It exposes me to many different things, that little niches that I didn't expect to enjoy, but I have. You know, I spent 20 plus years in fintech, and fintech is very defined as to how things get done. I was very good at that. I got to the highest levels in that, but there were always restraints on what I could and couldn't do. In the last 6 months, I've had more fun building little programs and building apps and building things to help little business ideas that I have. And I can code in a day stuff that would take me 3, 4 weeks to do, several years ago. So that's opened my mind up a lot to dig into things that I didn't normally expect myself to dig into. There's a company I'm working with in Atlanta right now, and they're in a business area that I knew nothing about. But I was able to bring myself up to speed really quickly because I understood basic business principles, and then just ingrained myself in that and learned from that. And that's what's been really fun for me. There's another company in Atlanta that I'm talking to now as well, and that's in healthcare. And my last time in healthcare was working for a nuclear medical supply company that I was the CTO of back in the early 2000s. Like that's as far into healthcare as I got. But this is a different animal, and I'm having a lot of fun learning all about it, and I'm having a lot of fun digging into it and seeing what's interesting for that business and what can I do with my knowledge of SaaS-based enterprise solutions and consumer goods that can translate to that. And I'm finding there's a lot more overlap than I expected.
Yeah, that's I love that answer so much. One of the reasons I asked it was because I guess growing up before I had my podcast, I didn't really have access to many people that had their own businesses that thought like you. Like I have a lot of respect for how you think, Doug, given all of your experience. And I would say my dad was one of the only people I had that kind of had some clue about entrepreneurship. He used to have his own business, but given how the world is, things happen and it didn't go all the way through, if you will. So it's just interesting to me to hear somebody who's had as many experiences as you to because you kinda see the picture, I guess, from a little bit more of a retrospective view as opposed to me, like, I'm looking at one thing and I think about it, I'm like, "Okay, what do I do from here? Would A be a better solution? Would B be a better solution?" And for you, I think you kinda not that you have, like, this magical crystal orb where you know all the answers, but maybe you just know a little bit better to go in this direction as opposed to this, because I can imagine if you weren't your son's dad and he wanted to go into day trading, imagine he spent a year learning about it instead of you just instantly shutting him down and be like, "No, like, you don't have enough money for that."
Well, I shut him down instantly because I spent a year doing that.
I understand, I
Yeah.
understand.
So during COVID, I had maybe the most perfectly timed exit in the history of business. We sold a fintech company. I was the CEO for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And we sold it on like March 10th, 2020. And
Wow.
the business was all about in-person consumer spending. So you got extra cashback rewards if you spent money in person rather than if you went on their website. And so that company got acquired on March 10th. March 13th, COVID hits. March 17th or 19th, whatever it was, COVID hits the US and everything shut down. But we were out of that. And the company had wanted me to stay on and help them run it for another year, but that would have required weekly travel to New York. And I just don't like spending that much time in New York. Like I love it in small doses, but I can't like I've had apartments in Atlanta for years. I've had apartments in Chicago for years. New York is not my thing. So I said no to that. So I had some time off. The company that I was interviewing for, that I ultimately ended up the CTO of, they were all about, that was another fintech company in credit card processing. And they were like, "Hey, we don't know what's going to happen with COVID. So we need to pump the brakes on bringing you on board. Are you fine with that?" I said, "Yeah, that's fine." And so I spent the next 6 months, 9 months learning day trading and just doing that in my basement. And there were days I was up 40, 50 grand. There were days I was down 70, 80 grand. There were days I was
Wow.
up five, and there were days I was down 10. And I think at the end of it, it was a wash, but that was a lot of anxiety. And I know Garrett very well, and he would get very anxious. So that's why I shut him down on that. I don't want you thinking, or anybody listening to this thinking, that I'm shutting down my son's dreams. I'm just like, I know my son and I know what he would hold and what he would do. And I know the chances he's taken in his life and how risk averse he is. So I was like, "Buddy, that's not for you." So that's why I shut him down on day trading. However, the tune of how I parent them in watching them become men and watching them go off into the world is underlined by curiosity. Just stay curious at all times. If you're always asking questions and you're listening more than you're talking, you will go much further in life than thinking that you have to have it all figured out today.
Yeah, I think a lot of things that you talked about resonated with me on more of a find the thing that makes you tick level, your advice to your son. This might be me being overly optimistic. One of my favorite things about you making me read Start, Scale, Exit, Repeat is
Mhm.
I'll never forget, I don't remember what chapter this was, but it was the idea that entrepreneurs are optimistic people and sometimes that either bites them in the ass or it could be the best thing for them. Given your experience, do you think, because a lot of people talk about finding your passion to make your business, do you agree with this concept?
I do, and that's what I talk to anybody that'll listen about most is find the thing that makes you really happy and just drill down on that. Like if you want to make a bunch of money and go into finance and you can go into banking, you can go into sales, like if you don't love that process, you're going to hate your job. If you really, really love listening to records and finding out about records. Start a podcast about records. Start an Instagram channel about records that you found. Find a way to monetize your passion, and it makes life a lot more fun. This comes on the heels about 2 weeks ago, or about a week ago. My girlfriend and I launched a website, and one of the things that we bonded over early was our shared love of thrifting, going to a thrift shop, digging through the t-shirts and finding that t-shirt that someone accidentally donated or didn't accidentally, but donated because they didn't know what it was worth. And I've found t-shirts that I spent less than $1 on that I've flipped for $150. I've got t-shirts that I've found in a bin, uh, and I've been able to get like 60, $80 for flipping on eBay. And so what we did was and she was the same way. She was like, always at thrift stores, always buying like her clothes there, always finding stuff that people didn't realize that they had. Like that's a lot of fun to find a deal. Like I love deals. And so we started talking about it, and wouldn't it be cool to start a business that just sells vintage and used t-shirts? And so we dug in on that together, and we've had more fun over the last year and a half. We've amassed, I think we've got 3,000 t-shirts at the house right now. And the problem then became, how do you list all of these shirts? And so with the advent of AI and my background in tech, I built a system that has a camera set up, and you click one button, it takes a picture of the front. You flip it around, you take another picture, it takes a picture of the back, and then two measurements, and I click process, and AI will describe the shirt, size the shirt, give me a detailed, rich description of the shirt, process it so that there's a up close picture of the hem, there's an up close picture of the collar, each sleeve individually, and then uploads that automatically to a website where it's instantly for sale, and then kicks out a label that goes on the bag so that we know what the SKU is and where to find it based on what bin it's in. So I took a passion of thrifting and finding cool t-shirts, and I was able to turn that into a business that's live now. And so that was our whole concept for Faded Vibes was, let's get this launched and just have it as a side hustle and give us something to do on weekends where we still go thrifting, but give us an outlet for building a business around a passion. And that's been more fun to work on than any project I've been a part of in the last several years, because it was like, ooh, I could do this and ooh, I can do that. And I've thankfully got the tech chops that I can go back on and build the network to do all this stuff, and knew how to set the servers up and all that. Knows, so her background, she's got 10 years in search engine marketing and search engine optimization. So our website is like, if you search for that obscure t-shirt, there's a very good chance, if we have one, that we will be the only search result that'll pop up. So that was a way for us to take both of our talents and put them into a passion project. And hopefully it turns into, what I'm doing. I would love to tell people I sell used t-shirts for a living. Like that would be great. And then have them ask questions. But that's just an example of finding a passion and building a business around it. Now, can you understand what would happen in 3, 4, 5 years if we're still doing this? Like, that's the thing. I did it with collectible putters back in the early 2000s. I did it with other hobbies that I've been associated with, radio control car racing, sim racing, like any hobby I get into, I try to build a little business around to give myself an outlet for making cool things. So that's what I tell anybody that'll listen is just be curious, follow a passion, and you'll figure out a way to monetize it. Because if you're really passionate about that thing, you tend to see things that others don't. And that's the difference between working for a company and working for yourself.
You accidentally just led me into a great segue. So I heard you say on Gary's show, and I'll quote you here: every human on the planet has some facet of their life that they work in that is very obvious to them that isn't obvious to anybody else.
Huh?
You talked a little bit about it, but do you believe that based on anybody and everybody's hobbies, the more, I guess, involved they are in something, the more, I guess, clear-sighted, or I guess what I'm trying to say is the more that they can see things that people with less experience cannot?
Oh, it's not about experience. I would take the word experience out of that sentence. You had me all the way until you hit experience.
Okay.
The thing that, and what I meant by that is everybody that's listening to this show right now, the two of us, we both have abundant knowledge about one obscure thing or 5 obscure things or 10 obscure things. Like I've gone through my life having tons and tons and tons of different hobbies. And when I get into the hobby, I learn everything there is to know about it. And I go deep. And anybody that knows me knows I go deeper than the average bear on every hobby that I've ever been into. I have a friend, Mike, who says I'm 11/10ths on everything. I'm just all the way in plus some. Um, the what I meant by that was, and it goes back to what I said earlier about passion, is everybody in the world is very smart about something, and it may not resonate with them to start a business around it. It may not resonate with them to make that their occupation. But when you talk to people like at parties or at gatherings or wherever, if you just be curious and meet people, you'll learn what their passions are. And then sometimes you'll ask, well, what are you doing with that? Oh, I can't do anything with that. That's not, no, I just do that for me. And that's fine for some people, but other people hate their job, but they're really smart about audio equipment. Well, you could start a blog for audio equipment, and on your blog, you could set up Amazon affiliate links or other affiliate links and review products. And I'll bet if you spent a year doing that 1 hour a day or even 4 hours a week, just really getting into that one facet of that one thing, and you were posting religiously about it on a blog or on a YouTube video, you don't need fancy equipment. You don't need anything. You got a phone. Everybody's got a phone. Just start talking to the universe about that thing that you're really into. And before you know it, you have a following. And before you know it, you've got brands reaching out to you to want to do this thing. And I'll bet 2, 3 years in, that could be your full-time occupation. And would some people like that? Yes. Some people like to keep things hobbies. And I get that. I've gone on that way too, where my hobby became a job and it wasn't fun anymore. But that didn't take away from the fact that I knew everything there was to know about that particular hobby and had fun learning new things every day. So for me, every human being does a wealth of experience about something. And like finding those people is always fun for me. Like I love parties, talking to people about what they're into. What hobbies do you have? Like that's a question you ask somebody on a first date. It's a question that I ask people at parties because I want to learn what they're
Sure.
passionate about.
Yeah, and also I think to add on to you, other than the fact that you find ways to, like you talked about monetizing it, if you do it for a long enough time, you'll start to be the audio guy. You're gonna be known for this thing, and then people are gonna start to trust you more. And over time, I guess it's gonna, or it has a potential to build into something amazing, we'll say.
Yeah.
I wanted to say one of the things you talked about, which was interesting to me, is this idea that a lot of people will get into something just for the money and they'll be miserable. And I think
Mhm.
it's also might fall under the category of some people think that money might buy them happiness. What do you think about that?
Money does not buy happiness. What buys happiness is doing what you love. And if those two can coexist in your life, then great. That's why I tell people, like, find something you're passionate about and do it. The money kind of doesn't matter at that point. Like, yeah, I get it. You're hustling and your podcast about Seinfeld isn't making you a millionaire. But if you're really happy doing it, it's not work. It's not hard. You know, you personally, you're doing this podcast as a passion project. This makes you happy to do it. Does this seem like work to you? Like, it's not. It's fun. You get to meet really interesting people. You've had amazing guests. How many life experiences have you personally gotten out of listening and talking with other interesting people? So that's the thing. I have been, um, I have been a millionaire. I have been bankrupt. I have been everywhere in between. And I have never been happier than I am right now because I only do the things that I love. And yes, it's nice to have the bills paid. That makes things easier. Money makes things easier in some regards. It does not buy happiness. I was making ungodly amounts of money and was completely miserable. Um, there was a time when this would have been mid teens. Um, I was traveling 52 weeks a year. I was on 3 to 5 airplanes a week. I had an apartment in Atlanta. I had a home in Cleveland. I had um, 250,000 air miles domestic that year. I was
Wow.
never more miserable because I wasn't spending time with my kids who I was watching grow up on my then wife's Facebook feed when she would post pictures. Like, I was chasing this dream of eventually thinking that, okay, I'm going to build this startup really big and then I'm going to cash out, make tens of millions, and then I can spend time with my family. Well, guess what? I was miserable doing that and I ended up divorced and then ended up not seeing my kids as often as I wanted to, and then ended up in a mountain of debt, and then ended up bankrupt for a different reason, not because of the debt, but for something else. Um, there was just this cascade of events that made life miserable. The last 2 years, I have never been happier in my entire life. I have amazing friends. I have amazing boys. I have an amazing girlfriend. I have a great house that is affordable and we made home. I love exploring the new city that I live in down in Tuscaloosa. I love the drive up to visit my boys. I stop in Cincinnati and see Garrett, and then I come up and see Oliver, and I get to see them both way more than I was before. So, money does not buy happiness. Following a passion and being happy with yourself buys happiness. There's no amount of money that can make someone happy if they're not happy with themselves. And that's something that I learned the very, very hard way. I was chasing something that I thought I wanted, but it wasn't until I got really happy with myself and in love with myself. And for all of my flaws, I've got many, no one's perfect, but understanding that aspect of myself is what got me to be really happy. And I've just kind of stayed there no matter how much money I was making.
If you are okay talking about it, I have always been interested on the subject. Do you think that there's a world where you can scale a startup and maintain a happy marriage and a happy, I guess, life outside of work?
That's a great question. Yes, it is possible. However, you got to talk to your partner, whether that's somebody that you live with, your girlfriend, your fiance, your wife, your husband, your anything, your significant other. They have to be invested in it too. Startup and founder life is not for the faint of heart. I saw Gary Vee talks about it a lot, where it's a 1% life. And if you really want that 1% life, if you want to live like no one else lives and have all of your hopes and dreams come true by being an entrepreneur, then there are sacrifices that you have to make. There are long nights. There are no weekends. There is sometimes a lot of travel. There are a lot of uncomfortable conversations. There are people that are going to disappoint you left and right. You need to be okay with that. You need to be okay with going down to near zero in your bank account to follow your passion. If that's truly what you want and you are all in on that, talk to your significant other, whether that's a spouse or a girlfriend or boyfriend or whoever it is. They need to understand that, because that's not for everybody too. I have had entrepreneurs that I've worked with where we get the company so far and then their significant other says, you shouldn't do that. And they listen to them and they don't do that. And then it falls flat. That's sad to see, because that should have been a conversation that everybody was aligned with. So I think it's a lot about alignment. For me personally, I've experienced it from both sides. I've seen founders that I worked with have their spouse tell them, you're not doing that. And then they don't do that or don't take it to the next level because of whatever reason. And that's not for me to say that that was right or wrong. It's just I've seen it happen. I personally, when I took over, so my background is my first significant startup here in Cleveland. I was working for another company and married and happy, and I had the opportunity to buy the company from my employer. And I remember being at yours truly at Shaker Square here in Cleveland, bouncing my then 6-month son on my knee, explaining to my wife why me spending all of our money on buying this company and turning it into a startup was a good idea. She was on board. I took it too far. I turned into something else. I was chasing money. I was chasing power. I was chasing status. And I left behind my marriage vows of being a team. So it is possible to do it. I know several people that are happily married and have very successful businesses. The road is also littered with divorce and dismay and breakups and hard fights and all that stuff. So is it possible? Yes. Is there a one size fits all magic answer? Absolutely not. It is up to the individual and what their tolerances are and what their partner's tolerances are. And y'all should have that discussion before you jump into doing that thing. The best time to do it is early on so that you don't end up ruining something or build up resentment. For me and Dana, which is all I can speak to right now, because that's the relationship I'm in, we are both very passionate about what it is that we do. And she's got her side businesses that are now producing significant income. And I've helped her work those out. I've got things that I'm doing that she's helped me work out. We consult together. We have contracts where we're a package deal and she handles these aspects of the business. I handle these aspects of the business. We work really well together because we're upstairs in the same office together. And I just lean over my monitor and say, hey, what do you think about adding this to that? And she's like, oh, that's a good idea. I can do this too. And then we just riff off of each other and build up cool stuff. It's great to work with a partner on something like that. And not everybody has that. But to your question is it possible? Yes, it's possible. It's very difficult. And you need to have some very hard conversations before you start, because then they'll just turn into resentments and you end up upside down in a relationship, which is arguably more important than whatever business thing you were looking at.
That's an amazing answer. And I think that's something that I see a lot of just looking into people and researching just the whole notion that, overworking yourself, maybe focusing on one thing and not the other. But I also think to the same extent, I think I don't have that much life experience, but I think if you lean too much on one side, it could be bad in both ways. So in the same way that if you work too much, it could be bad for your marriage. I think if you lean way too much towards your marriage, it might not be enough for you on the work side. What do you think about that?
Too much of anything is bad. Like, that's just basic human science. Too much alcohol can turn you into an alcoholic. Too many drugs turns you into an addict. Buy too many cars and you get upside down and you get into debt if you don't have the cash for it. Spend too much time doing one thing, you ignore another. Like, life is all about balance. And I think people lose sight of that. Literally every aspect of life is about balance. if this then that. Like there are a number of things that you can go back to. I find that when I spend a day on a routine, I do much better. I wake up at 6:30 every morning. I'm at my desk. I'm getting work done while, she sleeps in most days. I would say 3 out of 5 days of the week. I find that having an alarm set to tell me when to eat, an alarm set to tell me when to go work out, and spending, even if I go to the gym for 30 minutes a day, that gets me out of the house, that gets me into the gym. I'm doing exercise, I'm being good. Too much exercise can be a bad thing for some. Some can turn that into a business. That's up to, the individual person and what they're into. I don't know that there's a one size fits all answer for that either, because everybody has their own tolerances. Some people can drink on Tuesday and not pick up a drink until a week later when somebody offers them a beer. Some people get really into that and they're drinking every night, and they're forcing themselves down an even worse path. Same thing with, I've got friends that, will uh will smoke weed 2-3 days a week. I've got some friends that they need that to function. I've got just this collection of life experiences that I can speak to from a personal side, where anytime I got too into something, it just went bad. So I don't know that anybody can tell any other person. It's up to the individual to figure out what their tolerances for, living in excess are.
Sure. So I think the notion of balance is interesting to me because I hear it a lot in business where people say when you are starting a business, there is no sense of balance, as in you have to work a lot of hard hours and maybe sacrifice things that you would have wanted to do, but
Mhm.
now you don't have access to. So where does that form of balance fall into the whole equation? Because you said that you have realized over time that life is all about balance, but do you think that it's also ebbs and flows in a way that maybe sometimes your balance is going to be off just so you can do a little bit more of this as opposed to maybe now you're going to spend more time with your family and less in the business?
Let's define balance before we go much further. Balance can mean a certain amount of things every day. It can mean a certain amount of things every week. It can mean a certain amount of things every month, every year.
Oh, well, I like that. Okay.
Balance is different for everybody. So that's why I talk about, like when I said earlier about entrepreneurs like having to do hard nights and hard weekends. If I'm talking to somebody and I see that they're working too much, I'll be like, "Hey man, you gotta back that off and spend more time with your family for the next 2 weeks." Like that can be balance too.
Mm.
Balance doesn't always have to be in 24-hour segments. So balance is different for everybody. Some people's tolerances are higher, some people's tolerances are lower. You may have a spouse that says, "Go do your thing and talk to me in 6 months." I understand. You may have a spouse that needs a weekly date night. You may have someone in your life that needs constant care. That might have precedent over your business aspirations. So there's balance there. You got to balance the things out. Balance and curiosity will get you very, very far in life. If you go too deep on one thing, you may end up in trouble. That's not to say that going deep on something is a bad thing. I talked about it earlier. I said, if you're really into, audio gear, I think was the example I used, like, but there's a balance. Like you can't have 40 pair of speakers at your house at the same time and expect that you're going to have room to walk around it or have people over. And so there's a balance of that. I was talking with a very good friend of mine. We had lunch yesterday, in fact, and he has a golf podcast and a golf YouTube channel. Very successful, also very successful in his business life. And we talked about how he balances that. And he told me, he said, "I have so many golf bags and so many golf shoes at my house right now that I have to review. It's out of control." And so we talked about, like, well, when someone sends you a pair of shoes, let them know, okay, it's going to be August before I can get to these. It's going to be November before I can get to these. Or do that before they send them, and then you don't end up with 40 pair of shoes at the house. You only have 15. That's much more manageable. So, you can follow your passion and dig really deep on something. And if you have balance with that as well, then you're going to get a lot further than if you're trying to do all the things at once, then your life is out of balance. So that's what I mean. That's what I mean by all of that. It's not to say that one way is better than the other and everybody has their own tolerances and their own vibe. But for me, the people that I've interacted with that are successful, there's some order of balance in their life.
Wow, Doug, that is such an interesting concept. You really made me think. I've never thought about balance from a more zoomed out view. I think this is super interesting. It really resonates with me, this whole idea that you might not have, especially if you look at it from a month to month standpoint, maybe 1 month, you're a lot busier working, but then the next month you're a little
Mhm.
bit off. Because I was thinking about it more from daily and maybe weekly too. But wow, yeah, that is very interesting. That's
Well,
awesome.
again,
So
like, I like my day in bite-sized chunks, and that's just how I operate. Some people are very different. Some people can go to the gym 2 days a week and have a great physique. They go there for 4 hours, do their thing, and they take recovery days. That works for them, great. I know guys that are at the gym for 2 or 3 hours a day and are highly successful, and that's what helps drive them is making big muscles, and great. That's the balance they have. The guy I'm thinking of right now, his wife's at the gym there with him. They have a company they own together and they do that every day. That's just part of their daily routine. That's part of their balance. But there are also, when I go to the gym, there are people I see only ever on Wednesdays. There are people that I see there every time I'm there. Everybody has their own way, and there's no right or wrong
hmm,
answer. The internet is littered with people that are going to give you advice on the best way to do something. There is no best way to do something. There's what's right for you. There's what's right for your situation. There's what's right for your thing. Like that's what people don't understand. And I think what is so frustrating is everybody's looking for the best of something instead of figuring out what works for them.
yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that.
Everybody is. No, I'm not immune to it either. That's just the way it is.
Going back, because I'm very curious on this concept because this has came up a lot again in my optimistic brain. I know we were talking very early on about passion, and we've brought it up a couple times after. What I've always been interested because I've noticed that there's, some people who are more optimistic. There's some people who maybe are a little bit more pessimistic. Again, it's not my room to judge. Maybe it's based on life experiences. I'm not
Mhm.
sure. I'm not the master of that. I don't know how
Yeah.
that works, but to the people that you might say, find your passion and find a way to monetize it. And they say to you exactly what you mentioned. Yeah, but my Seinfeld podcast isn't going to make me millions of dollars. How do you navigate around the mindset of people that think to themselves, not necessarily that this thing isn't possible, just like, okay, yeah, I'm interested in, I don't know, repairing my AirPod case, but how is that as a hobby going to help monetize that? What would you say to those people?
Uh, Not everybody needs to monetize everything. Like that's another part of the problem is everybody thinks that everything, and I'm guilty of this too. I just have an entrepreneurial brain. So anytime I look at something, I think of how can I make money doing this. So that's an entrepreneurial way to look at things. And I tend to do that with everything. So I'm probably not the right person to ask about that specifically. I will say that if it's something that you would do for free, then that's something that maybe you want to dig in on because you might be doing it for free for a very long time. And then it might pop off one day and you're all of a sudden making enough money to pay off your house or making enough money to have 2 or 3 nice vacations a year. Like success in business has different levels for every person. One thing that I've found is I've been the happiest at my jobs where I would do it for free. Now, I don't do anything for free because that's a quick way to get broke. But when you are passionate enough about something to want to do it, whether you're making $1 or $1 million or no dollars, and you're happy doing it, then does money really matter? Like, yeah, it would be great if if your AirPod repair video went viral and you made 2 or 3 thousand bucks on it after a year, but you would be thinking, what else can I repair around the house? That was cool. That was fun. Maybe that Shure microphone is clipping and you want to see if it's maybe the USB cord. Well, you do a quick video on, hey, I was getting this weird clipping. Here's what I updated. Here's why I updated this driver. here's why this driver was bad and this one was better for me. And I upgraded to this cable on Amazon, link in the description below. And now all of a sudden you're making affiliate money off of the affiliate link from the Amazon store. And you're trending because a bunch of other people have that same problem. And now you've got an AirPod case video and you've got a Shure microphone fix video. What else can I fix? Well, this light in the back keeps flickering. Wonder why? Let's look into it. Well, I bought the wrong one. This one was only good for about 3 weeks, but I bought this new one and it works much better. And here's the Amazon affiliate link. Like little things like that take almost no time and can turn into revenue. So it's just about doing stuff and putting it out in the universe. Like be curious because there's curious people out there like, hey, my microphone's clipping. Wonder what that's about. And they Google search and they find your video and you're off to the races. So if it's something you would do for free, like fix your own microphone, why not put it out there and see if that can help somebody else? You know, being helpful is not unmonetizable. Like being helpful, I am every day I try to be as helpful as I can to as many people as possible. That's the first question I ask whenever I get a call from somebody I haven't talked to in a while, or it's an old friend that's having a hard time. That's my first question is, how can I be helpful? That doesn't mean that my being helpful by making a video about, you know, how I got this look out of the OBSBot Meet 2 camera, you know, that's helpful to somebody, but my affiliate link can also sell more of that camera and I can make a few bucks. There is a time to just be helpful in helping somebody move. There's no way to monetize that. There's no way to monetize listening to a friend. There's no way to monetize, you know, fixing my mom's computer because she downloaded some malware. Like that's not a monetizable thing necessarily. Like I don't want people thinking that I'm always looking to monetize things, but when it's something that I do around the house that I think, oh, I wonder if somebody else has figured this out, I'll make a video on it. I post it on Instagram. If it never sees the light of day, so what? It's out there in the ether. If it helps one person, I did a video last week about how to make a bed. Like I got out of bed and I realized that I'd been making the bed for the last 5 years. About 5 years ago, I said, you know what? I'm going to make the bed every day. And now I just do it second nature and I get out of bed and I make the bed. And I was somewhere, we were out at dinner and Dana said something about like how I make the bed every day. I'm like, you don't make the bed every day? And she's like, no, I like when you're out of town, I never make the bed. And so I was like, I wonder how many people do and don't make the bed. So I made a video about how to make the bed. I got more hate comments from people like, I like sleeping in an unmade bed. And then other people popped in about a top sheet debate on whether top sheets were a good idea or not. But the video got like 20,000 views. And all it was me showing people how to make the bed, that it only takes 30 seconds and you know, that's a thing. So that's a case where, like, do I think I'm ever going to monetize that video? No. But I just put it out there because it's helpful. Maybe somebody who's like, yeah, I should make the bed. And I convince one person to make their bed every day and they feel better about themselves because they accomplished something by the time they left their bedroom every morning. Maybe that turns into somebody else having a good day. Like stuff like that, I just look to be helpful.
That's awesome. I think I wish more people were like that as well. I think I also try my best to be nice to people, be helpful. I love talking to just random people, just
Yeah,
finding out about them, asking them questions. I mean, I think with my
it's
podcast, it's like a extrapolated version of that.
It's the best. Helping
Yeah.
people is the best feeling. And that's the thing. Like when you're happy with yourself, you're way better at helping other people. There's nothing worse than when I see somebody that's miserable in their own life giving advice to somebody else.
Mm.
Like that just rubs me the wrong way. It's like you spend all day mad at the world for whatever. Why would I possibly listen to anything that you have to say about my life? Like, if you're not happy with your own life, you have no business telling other people what they should be working on and what they should be doing. Like, it's great to listen to people and everybody's got their own thing. I don't want to take anybody away from that. But like the amount of times in my life where somebody that I know is very miserable at what they do, at what they are, and their in every aspect of their life, and they're giving me advice on what I should do. I'm like, I don't want to take that advice. That's like, you're the last person I want advice from. You can't hold a job. You have no money in your bank. You're always behind on this, you're always asking for a favor, and you're going to give me advice on what I should do. That was early on in my career. The number of people that shit on my ideas who weren't doing things on their own, like it drives me nuts a bit when I see entrepreneurs taking advice from people that aren't doing the thing that they're doing or that they want to do and listening to them. Like that rubs me the wrong way too.
I think that I have a lot of trust in myself, but I always like to just gauge other people's ideas, whether it's my friends. Maybe I ask my dad a lot for just what he thinks about things.
Mhm.
How do you know who you should and shouldn't take advice from?
I think this goes back to what I've said a half dozen times so far today is just being curious. Everybody has a good gut. Like everybody has a good gut. You know what advice you should take and what you shouldn't. Like I
Interesting.
when somebody gives me a piece of advice, if it's somebody that I respect their opinion on, and they're like, "Hey, you should really look into X, Y, or Z." Like, I'm like, "Huh." This goes back to if people listen to me on other podcasts, I'm pretty open with my sobriety. I've been sober 35 years. And one of the things that you do in sobriety when you're in the program, the 12-step program, is you get a sponsor. And the first question that everybody always has is, how do I know who to ask to be my sponsor? And the old timers will tell you, you find somebody that has something you want and you ask them. And it's not like monetized, like this person has a nice car, so they get to be my sponsor. It's like you look for the serenity that somebody has that you want. You look for the way about them. You look for that type of stuff. And that's the person that you ask to be your sponsor. So in my life, I've had several sponsors, and the things that I look for have changed over the years because my wants and needs and curiosities have also changed. So if you're asking me, who do I look like, how do I know what advice to listen to? I just always tend to know like if this is a good idea or a bad idea. And is this person coming from a place where they have knowledge about this subject where they can speak to that, or are they just talking to hear themselves talk? So I like working with entrepreneurs that I can learn from. I like working with founders that I can learn from. I am by no means the world's authority on anything. So I can always learn from people. When I've had podcasts in the past in and around hobbies, I'm asking, my guests, what is it that makes you tick around this particular thing? Or what do you think about that thing? And it's no different than what you're doing with me right now. You're asking me questions and you're looking for advice. Like that's what podcasts are. It's other people's advice on things. So, but we all know when we like an episode and when we don't like an episode. And there may have been people that tuned out at the 5-minute mark listening to me talk today. And there may be people listening to me talk here at the 50-minute mark. It's all about perspective. And can I get some nugget of information from this person that maybe helps me think about things in a different way? And so I have people in my life that are very smart at business, and I tend to ask them business questions. I have people that are very smart in social settings, and I ask them more social questions. I met with one of my first big boy jobs, I will say, was working at an ad agency in Cleveland. This would have been 95 through 99. I think I worked there, or 96 through 99. And I haven't worked there in 25 years, but this was a husband and wife co-owners of this ad agency. And I always respected them and I always loved working for them. It was one of the greatest times of my life was when I was, 21 years old and had a job at an ad agency and I was coding websites every day and it was brand new and it was fun every day. But one of the things, now I hadn't talked to these particular founders in probably 10 years on the phone. Like there had been like, Facebook messages back and forth, like, hey, Garrett's getting so big, or oh my God, look at Ollie scoring, whatever it was, little things like that. But I was wondering what they did that made it to where I never once saw them fight in the office. So this is a husband and wife. I've been married twice. I know that fights happen, but I never saw them bring it to the office. And so I reached out to Annette, Tanya and Annette are their names. I reached out to Annette and I said, hey, do you have 10 minutes for a phone call this week? And her first reaction was, please tell me you're not dying. I'm like, no, I'm not dying. Like I said, I need to know, like, how did you guys do it? How did I work for you for like 5 years and I never saw you once bring any marital dispute into the office ever? Like, what did you do? How did you do it? And she said, that's so sweet. Let's go get breakfast and talk. And so Tony and Annette and I went out to breakfast and we talked we were probably there at that yours truly for 2 hours, just talking about their experiences. And they would be like, yeah, this one thing happened at home, but we both drove separate cars to the office every day. And that helped us each have our own lives. And we had lunch with other people every day. We didn't just always eat together. And when we were at the office, it wasn't, hey, sweetie, it was, hey, Tony. And when we were at home, it was, hey, sweetie again, or hey, hey, love. I wanted to know what the secret sauce was because Dana and I have started working together at different companies now. And I didn't want to ruin that amazing relationship by doing something wrong. So that was a case where I sought advice from somebody that had what I wanted. And that goes back to what I said earlier about, in sobriety, you find somebody that has something you want and you ask them for it. So that's kind of how I live my life is if I'm looking for advice on something, I find the smartest person I know about that particular subject and I ask their opinion. And then I listen to their reasons and maybe it's applicable to me, maybe it's not. I don't know. This worked for them, maybe it will work for me, but I took some of those learnings home and I sat down with Dana and I said, okay, when we're at the office, like you're Dana and I'm Doug. When we get home, we can be pet names for each other. We're going to keep different workout schedules. We're going to keep different, lunchtime schedules. We're going to do these things when we're in this office. We're going to speak to each other this way. And it's really helped a ton. So that's a case where I got advice from somebody and was like, boy, that's really smart. But I took advice from somebody that was really smart about that given subject. So that's a very long way to answer the question that you asked. Very good question. And I'm sure everybody wants to know the answer to it. So the case is just find the smartest person you know about that thing. And if they don't give you a good enough answer or you don't like it, find somebody else. Like people are more than happy to give you their opinions on things if you just ask.
Yeah, and I also think this is an interesting topic. You talked about helping yourself versus, helping other people, first helping yourself.
Yeah.
I think if you go for advice that you're seeking out, for example, you went to these two people that you respected used to work for, and you asked them this question, and then through understanding their experience, you increased your intelligence on this topic. So after you living that experience and you telling Dana, hey, this is what we're going to do X, Y, Z, now you're in a position, in my opinion, to tell other people if they're curious about like, hey, I see you and Dana work pretty closely with each other. How come you guys aren't arguing? And you don't have to say through your own experience, but you could be like, hey, I used to work for this one person and
Mm-hmm.
here's what he told me and we've been implementing it and this
Mm-hmm.
is how it's worked for us. So
That's
I
exactly
think
right.
this is so this is so interesting because I always talk about this and I feel like you're the only person I've met, I guess we're on a
Mm-hmm.
call, but only person I've talked to that really understands this concept of helping yourself because I feel like through you can even say selfishly, but through selfishly like investing in myself as opposed to always trying to help other people, I feel like I'm in a better position to help other people. I think the prerequisite of helping other people is helping yourself. I think it's such an interesting concept that people don't grasp their head around.
I think it's very different now than it was, say, uh, 10, 15 years ago. And speaking from my own experience, 10, 15 years ago, the mentality was figure it out on your own. And now we live in a world where knowledge is in abundance and opinions are overflowing. And there's this constant amount of, you should do this. Here's how to do that. Like people are telling you at all times, and I'm guilty of this too. And, to my point earlier about making a video about how to make a bed, like that's me telling people how to make a bed. Like that's my way that I make the bed. Is this the best way to make a
Sure.
bed? I don't know. I'm not to say that. I know this helps me make the bed. I do it this way. So knowledge is in abundance. We're in a very peculiar time in the world where there is a lot of people that want to be seen as this is the only way to do this thing. And this goes back to curiosity and just being curious about stuff is how? How do you do that? How do you do this? And I think till you get happy with yourself, it's very difficult to speak with authority on a subject that you yourself are struggling with. So, like, there have been times where in the last 3 or 4 days, I got a question from a founder that I was working with, and he said, how are we going to handle this, whatever situation? And my reaction was, I don't know, but let me ask some friends and find out. I don't know how we're going to handle that because I've not done this before. And I think that answer is becoming more and more rare in a society and in a place of culture where it's frowned upon to not know everything. Like, if I ask your opinion on something, I want you to tell me how to do it. I'm the guy that say, like, if I don't know how to do something, I'm the last person to raise my hand and say I know how to do something, because that's a quick way to get burned. That's a quick way to ruin something, is to make up an answer. If I don't know the answer to something, I raise my hand and say, I don't know. But here's who I'm going to call and here's who I'm going to ask. Or I may just go to Google like you should have and just ask Google what's the best, way to handle this. And it was like a tax question. Like, I don't know why I was the one that got that question because we have an accountant, but like, it's just interesting to me, the people that aren't willing to say, I don't know, and be curious to find out the right answer to something. I think we live in a world of abundant knowledge and it's at everyone's fingertips on a device in their pocket. And it's really easy to find conflicting opinions on literally anything you ask. There's no right or wrong way to do stuff. You just got to figure it out. But back to your original question, I got off on a tangent there. Being happy with myself has made me a lot more confident in being able to tell someone that I don't know the answer to something. I think when people are self-conscious
Interesting.
or when they're not happy in their own lives, they're quick to give somebody advice. They're quick to give someone an answer, even if they are not 100% sure on it. That's just the world we live in right now. And I don't like it. I like finding I like finding trusted sources for things. I like finding different ways to do things. I like asking for opinions, but I'm never going to say, hey, I need you to like tell me exactly step by step how to do this one thing. Because in anything, there's 100 different ways to do something, and you'll find conflicting opinions on the best of anything. So for me, it goes back to curiosity, and it goes back to being willing to admit when A, I don't know something, or B, when I'm wrong on something. Like if I learn a better way to do something, that's my happiest day. And the first people I'm calling are the people that I was wrong and letting them know. But you can't do that if you're not happy with yourself, and you can't do that if your own house isn't in order.
Totally. Something you said was popped something in my mind that was funny. So I'll say this guy, he's become a mentor of mine. He spoke at my business frat, and then I went to talk to him, and we talked for like an hour about just a bunch of different stuff. He was very intelligent. Text him all the time. I've had him on my podcast already, but he's the president of an IT company, and he tells me a lot of times people that work under him will be like asking him all these questions, and he tells them, he's like, I understand you're having trouble with this, but I want you to understand that I'm about to go onto Google and search up how to do it. He's like, I don't know how to do this thing either, but it's
Yep.
always accessible. It's easy to find this information.
hmm I had
So it's funny you brought that up.
I had somebody last week, they had asked me like, hey, I'm looking to so I have a background in photography, and I was asked, hey, what's a good macro lens for, to buy? And I said, I love the Tamron 90 millimeter. I think it's a 2.8 aperture. And they said, okay, is it this one? I said, I don't know which camera you're attaching this to, but if it works for your camera, then yes, it's that one. Like the Tamron, they make a 90 millimeter, I think it's f2.8. That's my favorite macro lens. And then like some time goes by and I get another text. It's like, hey, I got the lens. Oh, great. Have fun. It gets really close. So you can get like an inch away and it makes it the whole screen. It's a be careful. You can see fingerprints with this lens. And he said, well, what are the best settings? And I said, I don't know what camera you're using it on. Well, I'm using it on this camera. Okay, well, I don't know your lighting setup. Well, what's the best light to buy? Well, there is no best light to buy. Every room is different. The paint on the walls can vary what the reflections are going to look like. Are you using a strobe? Are you using a softbox or are you using direct light? What are you shooting? Like all of these things go in. Well, just tell me the best settings for the camera though. Again, I don't know what lighting setup you're using. Well, what light should I buy? Well, okay, now we're getting into like, I can't give you 50 years of photography knowledge on a text thread about
Right.
like how to take a picture. Like that's a thing that is a learned experience. So I told him, I said, get the lens, attach it, and start playing with settings until you get close. Just put it on auto. Let's start there and see what settings it used, and then go up or down a few stops from that. Go up or down on the shutter speed to see what you've got. Try different lighting. Be curious. Work it out. I can't give you 50 years worth of experience behind the lens immediately. If I was there in front of you, we could probably mess with some stuff and I could play with it in front of you and show you what I did. But that's not something I can just tell you the best way to do something. There are 100 different ways to use that lens. But that's a case where everybody just wants immediate answers to fix my problem right now. And problems aren't always that easy. So you got to play.
And I think there's a lot of value in finding the solution yourself, because if you find it yourself, not only do you have a little bit more experience in this hobby that you're getting into, but I also believe that it's just a good skill to have where you can rely on yourself as opposed to always looking outwards for the answers.
Oh, we're going to bring it back to my boys now. Like when they come to me with a problem, like they want my advice on something, not advice on something, but like, how do I fix this thing? It's like, okay, let's go fix it together. Well, how are we going to do
Ooh,
that? We're going to work it out. Well, my computer doesn't work. I've got this, and this. Okay, well, let's dig in. I'm going to go into your device manager. I'm going to look at things that might be conflicting. I'm going to look at your drivers, but I walk them through the problem solving that I would go through so that they saw me do that. And over the last several years, the number of times now that they've gotten older and are more self-sufficient, like they work problems out on their own. And that comes from me not fixing everything for them. Like, when they were little kids, scrape your knee. Okay, let's get in the house. Here's the Neosporin. Put this on it. Now here's the Band-Aid. Put that on it. Like I had them, when they're 5, yeah, I'm gonna put the Band-Aid on. But like when they're like 13, they're old enough to know how to fix a cut and put a Band-Aid on. Like it's just about learning things on how to work problems rather than just always just be handed the solution to stuff. Like I've never once learned anything where somebody just gave me the solution. Right now, and doing the app that we did for Faded Vibes, like this whole system that I built for processing t-shirts, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I just went on AI and said, make me a program that does this. It would have spit out a bunch of
right.
code that I wouldn't have understood. But my background in object-oriented programming helped me craft my prompt to the AI to write batches of code that I then take and I integrate because I knew how to do that. And as I'm working through the things, I know, okay, in this, function, we've got this, and this that are broken. Uh, like, how do we, you know, I'm using a fixed focal lens. How can we zoom in by 15% on this? And the AI will tell me the answer, but I knew how to tell AI what to look for and what thing it was that I wanted help with. So it's really turbocharged my brain in that because I've got this background and this understanding, I'm a much better developer now than I would be. Like my skill set for actually writing code is 20 years old. It's been 20 years since I've written a line of code, but I understood the mechanics and I understood what to look for and how to work the problem. And that's a increasingly rare thing these days with the current generations is they're used to just Googling, best restaurant in Cleveland, Ohio, and it giving them a puke of, Yelp reviews, and they just pick the one that's 5 stars. Like, and they just go there. Like, well, there's other cool restaurants. Go wander around and see. Like, that's the thing. But everybody in this current generation and my own to some degree kind of got programmed to just rely on a computer to fix all their problems for them. And the problem solving is the part that is needed more than ever right now, is people digging into problems and working through the solve. So that's I think more important than knowing the right answer is knowing how to find the answer or how to work the problem.
Sure. I know one of the things you talked about earlier was the idea of staying curious, being open to new opportunities, and trying out a lot of new things. Do you think that one of the reasons for this being one of your philosophies, quote unquote, is because of you never knowing how your current or past hobbies can help you in the future?
Uh, that's an interesting question. So I have a pretty deep delineation between my hobbies and my work, and that was by design. So for many years, my life was behind a computer. I wanted to find hobbies that were as far from a computer as possible. There was a time. I have some hobbies that are computer related. We all do. Any Anybody these days does. But like, I wanted to learn how to rebuild a mechanical watch movement. So that's about the most analog thing that there is a clock. So I bought an old clock and I rebuilt it. Now I used technology to teach me how to do it, but I used my hands and I did something mechanical. I got really into the audiophile life and using vacuum tube amplifiers with vinyl records and knowing which cartridge gave me which type of a sound and getting really into that. So I've always tried to I've always tried to find hobbies racing cars, with a manual transmission and no traction control. Like, those are my favorite types of cars to drive. I've got a 1975 Porsche 914 that I rebuilt with my bare hands. Every part of that car was in my hand at some point. And I did this, that, and the other to this engine, and I used this type of suspension, but that was very, very analog with my hands. Um, I think the business transition is more about sticking with a problem until it's fixed than it is that my hobbies have taught me anything about how to be good in business. If I've got a transmission cracked wide ass open and all the parts everywhere, and I know I've got to put it all back together, I've got to work that problem. There is no person that I can call that will magically show up at my door and fix my transmission for me. I took it apart. I got to be the one to put it back together. I've got this watch that is on my wrist now. Like, I built the movement for this watch because it was found at the bottom of a lake or something like that. Like, it was all crusty and nasty when I got it, but I had to learn how to polish all the jewels. I had to learn how to polish all the brass. I had to fix teeth. I had to find the tiniest screws that you have ever imagined with this tiny screwdriver set that I had to prop on my arms on the table to make sure that it stayed shut. But what I learned about business, or what I take into business from that, is if I can do this thing, I can do that thing. If I can do this thing with my bare hands and build it and make it work, then this problem that I've got with a server that's not talking to another server is really no different. There are parts somewhere that aren't working correctly. Let's find the part. And that works the same way in business at large. We have this area of the company that isn't functioning as it should. Well, let's break it into its parts and let's see what part isn't working. Let's fix that part, and then we put it back together, and then it should work. So my hobbies, while mechanical and analog, force me to get a problem solved. I don't know if that answers your question or if that obfuscated it further, but like, you asked me how my hobbies have affected my business, and that's the best way that I can put it is I have a very, like, golf is a hobby of mine. There's no easy button for golf. You have to know the mechanics of a swing and why this does that. And my hobbies are car racing and, you know, thrifting is another thing. Like, I can't just call a thrift shop and say, give me all your really good t-shirts.
Yeah, right.
I have to go there and flip through 500 or 600 t-shirts to find the 30 or 40 that I want. and they go in the thing, and then I meet Dana at the front, and she found these 50 and I found these 50, and we buy 100, and then we take them back, and then I use my technology to process them. But had I not known what to look for in that shirt, I wouldn't have been able to build the processing engine that I have, because I had a knowledge from a hobby that transitioned and translated into something that I'm turning into a business. So that's a great way of just using passions in concert with each other to accomplish tasks.
I love it. Doug, last question for you.
Yep.
How how do you think people can build the confidence to trust themselves in solving solutions within business?
Boy, that's a big one. You picked like the last question for the biggest. And this is here's the most honest and raw answer I can give you: by failing a lot.
Mm,
By failing a lot. I have failed more in my life than I have succeeded. I have longer list of failures than I have successes. And that's what's made me confident, because I know that thing didn't work. I know this thing didn't work. I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to do this again. I won't go down that path ever again, which, back to your earlier question, was why I was able to tell Garrett not to day trade so quickly. But, think about it with anything. Like if you're a football player, you get your butt kicked 1,000 times before you figure out how to break that type of a tackle. You are a basketball player. You know that if you do this type of a play, it's going to fail every time if this is what the offense is looking like or what the defense looks like. If you're building a car, you know not to use that screwdriver because it strips screws. You
mm,
know not to use that size wrench because it looks like it's the right one, but it's actually SAE and not metric. And you only know that because that one time that you used a metric on your power drill, it stripped the screw out and you spent 4 hours digging it out with manual tools. Like no one learns anything of value without failing at it first. Like those are the best lessons. So when my kids mess something up, I am more than happy to be like, sweet, we failed at that. Okay, what did we learn? When I fail in business, I don't care. I don't care. I have left millions of dollars on the table where if I'd have just done these two things differently, my life would be very different now. I've got no regrets on that because I know not to do those things anymore, because this would have happened. And you learn something by failing. So that's the only way to learn anything of value, in my opinion. I could be very wrong, and I'm sure in your comment section it'll blow up with people saying how wrong I was with this, or how bad of a guest I was, or oh, he rambled on about this too much. I don't care. I did the thing. I said what I thought was the appropriate answer to the question. Was I wrong? Possibly. Do you have a better opinion? Maybe. Does your opinion work for you and not for me? That's possible too. But this was my truth. And so, yeah, failure. That's the best way to get to confidence.
Quick follow-up to that. I guess it
Yeah.
wasn't the last question, but do you think that the few successes that you've had far outweigh all the failures?
Oh, by far. Yeah. I would rather uh I have no, like, I don't want to say I have no regrets in life, because there's always like that thing you're thinking like, man, I shouldn't have said that. Or if I'd
Sure,
have
sure,
not
sure.
put that one line in, that email would have come off a lot better and I probably would have gotten what I was looking for. My successes are abundant. My failures are abundant. Um, Different than I thought they would be.
Yep.
When my brother and I had our startup, we thought we were going to make hundreds of millions of dollars. Like that was very much on the table. That was what things were going to be. And then a series of cascading events happened that put us both in bankruptcy. And it's not necessarily anything that we did wrong. It's not, part of it was timing, part of it was our board of directors. Like I can point fingers at 100 different ways that this could have gone good or could have gone bad. But it didn't go well. And I lived to fight another day. Here I am, 10 years later now, 15 years later. And I'm still standing. Everything's fine. I learned a whole lot from that, and I won't do those things again. So that's there. But here's the success that we had that neither of us were looking for. Just about everybody on our executive team is now a C-level somewhere. There have been a bazillion exits by all of the people that worked for us. They have gone on to do amazing things. There are, I think, 3 or 4 children in the world that exist because their parents met working together at our company.
Very
I
cool.
get text messages on a yearly basis from people I haven't talked to since then that will tell me that was still the most fun they've ever had working somewhere. Our sales team has all taken what they learned from us and our process and put it into ways that they're making ungodly amounts of money now and happy as hell. I met yesterday with, she was my best sales rep. Her best year at my company, she probably made 130,000. I'm not going to tell you how much money she makes now, but it is absurd. And I want to work for her. Like, she's on it and will tell you that those were the days. And she sends me pictures all the time. So like, success can mean different things in different ways to different people for different reasons. My failures are still successes because I learned things, and I'll take that answer to my grave.
Doug, thank you so much for your time. That was the last question.
Okay,
I
great.
appreciate it. Where, if you want to, where can people find you? Any links, anything you want to promote?
Find me on LinkedIn. You'll see my picture. Reach out if you've got a question or I said something that offended you. My website, I pulled down. It's at mrdoug.com, MRDOUG. And then if you want to find my t-shirt business, it's fadedvibes.com. So those are the 3 places you could find me.
Awesome. Doug, thank you so much for coming on the show. Also, for my listeners, I do have a 50-page ebook coming out that I wrote. More on that on my website, elongelfand.com. Check it out. But for now, we're going to give the spotlight to Doug. So go check out his stuff. And thank you for listening through the whole episode.